The storyline of Alice and her daughters Tangie and Nyla in For Colored Girls from 2010 isn't just about a mother and her daughters fighting. It's about what happens when trauma gets buried instead of healed.
Alice, Tangie, and Nyla all cope with trauma differently. One hides behind religion, one hides behind rebellion, and one inherits the emotional confusion from both.
But once the truth about their childhood traumas comes out, all of these women are changed forever.
This is the craziest part of the movie, these characters.
You know, every time I think that I know what the craziest part of the movie is, it's not the craziest part of the movie. It is ticked up by more things. Just as full disclosure, we are doing a series. We have already covered Crystal's story, the one with the two kids that, you know, what happens to them. And also Joe's story, the one that's played by Janet Jackson and her husband in that wild story. Every time I think it can't get worse, then you find another way to make it worse, Tyler Perry.
It always gets worse.
Yes. And so we have covered each of these separately. And yeah, it's just nuts. So with the Alice, Tangie, and Nyla storyline, it is definitely one of the most emotionally difficult parts of For Colored Girls, because it feels just painfully human. Like in the other situations, extraordinary things happened in Joe's situation. Extraordinary things happened with Crystal and her two kids. Stuff that, you know, is not really necessarily super likely to happen. But what happens with these three, unfortunately, happens far too often, and is left secretive. And these women are traumatized for decades, if not their entire lives, as a result of the things that have happened to them in childhood. But, you know, nobody in this family of women is emotionally healthy, but the film refuses to reduce any of them into these simple stereotypes or villains, because on the one hand, a person is acting crazy, like, you know, some of the stuff that Alice is doing, this is the Whoopi Goldberg character. Some of the stuff she's doing is just like, what? You know, and then you have Tangie, who's played by Tangie Newton, and, you know, she is acting wild in the movie. And we have Tessa Thompson playing Nyla, who is the younger sister. And, you know, you just look at everybody is acting out of their trauma, and you start to have empathy for each of these characters, even if what they do in any particular moment seems particularly despicable. There's grace for that, at least somewhat, right? Y'all go to the comments and tell me how much grace you have, especially for Alice, because in a lot of ways, I feel like she is very responsible, not for the overall problems, but for, I don't know, I don't want to blame the victim, but like how she wasn't able to get past things enough to at least help her, at least not hurt her daughters. Let's put it that way. Even if she couldn't help them, she didn't have to make it even worse. But yeah, so that's where we are. We just got to get into this story.
I'm Heit.
And I'm Cheri.
And you've discovered Axiom Amnesia.
We want to thank all of the supporters who helped to make this video possible. If you want your name to appear alongside these contributors, make a one-time donation via Cash App, or you can head on over to patreon.com/axiomamnesia to enjoy all of the benefits of becoming a monthly subscriber. The co-executive producers of this video are LaToya Chase, Makila H., Kimberly Fayetta Wetzel, and Regis Hale. They requested this film through Axiom Amnesia's Deep Dive on Demand program that we'll tell you more about later. So let's get straight into the film. So the story of Tangie and Alice and Nyla, it starts out with Tangie is in the bed with this man, and she kicks him out of her house after a one-night stand. He's a married man, and she's like, well, you got what you came for then, so leave. Now, Tangie is Tangie Newton's character, so just so you can kind of visualize what's happening. And it was just kind of like, wait, what? You know, I mean, this is our first introduction to her. So then next we see Alice, who is Tangie's mother, and she's banging on Tangie's door. She wants some money. And then we find out a little bit about what's going on. Tangie says, well, Granddaddy put me in charge of his will because he knew you would spend all of his money and give it to that cult. So wait, we ain't even hardly in the movie, and we find out that Alice, that's Whoopi Goldberg's character, is in a cult and gonna give all the money away.
She was gonna give all the money to Nature Boy.
Basically, y'all, we covered the whole Nature Boy thing. I'm gonna go ahead and link a couple of the videos on Nature Boy that we recently did because they had done this whole mini series on him in the description in case you, or docuseries basically, yes, in case you missed that. So Alice is in this cult, and then Alice is like, you're gonna go to hell. Like, she is always telling somebody they gonna go to hell, basically, that she's like a holy roller but extra, right? And she's she calls God Elohim, and she's like, pray to Elohim. And, so this is what you see her doing in this movie. And so she continues to bang on the door, though, telling her to repent when Tangie won't open the door for her. And it's making a scene because this is an apartment building, And we have Gilda, who is the neighbor that is played by Felicia Rashad. And, she's always looking and seeing what's going on as everything is happening. So then when Alice finally leaves the building, she's passing out flyers for her religious cult on the street. And she encounters Nyla's dance teacher. She doesn't realize that this is her daughter, the younger daughter, Nyla, played by Tessa Thompson. She doesn't realize this is her dance teacher, Yasmin. And so in a stroke of what I guess I'd call serendipity, Yasmin gives Alice $1 donation, $1, while she happens to be talking about her daughter, Nyla, right? Saying, she's this great dancer, blah, 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 right? So then next we see Nyla in dance class, and then she is with her friends, and she's talking about how it was graduation night, and she's telling this whole story to her little girlfriends in the class, right? And she was like, I was the only virgin and I'm in a crowd. And then she talks about how this group of 5 guys, she names the 5 guys, how they picked her up and they were smelling of alcohol. This is the night of graduation, which in the opening, we see her actually graduating, right? So she gets drunk with these guys, and she said they was doing these nasty dances. And it was just very weird how she was describing it. But she's glorifying all of it, right? And so then the party got crazy, and then her and Bobby left the party, and they were in the back seat of a Buick. Okay, we already know where this is going, right? And so she's like, by the time the sun was coming up, I just couldn't stop grinning. So you know what went down in the back seat of that Buick. And it's funny because one of the girls is like, so you basically gave up your virginity in back seat of the Buick. That's when Yasmin, the teacher, the dance teacher, comes in, is like, you better not be talking about, So then it gets cut off and we don't get anything more. So then we see the class going on, and then during class, Nyla rushes outside and she's throwing up. She's feeling nauseous. And of course, if you know, we already know what's up with Nyla.
Anytime this happened in a movie,
anytime she's throwing up, it means you knocked up. In case you didn't know, Axiom.app members, Patreon members, and YouTube channel members all have access to over 100 exclusive videos that the people on YouTube don't have access to. Go ahead and become a member so that you can get access to our exclusive catalog. The links are in the description. So next we see Alice return home, and Nyla is there. The apartment looks like a place of hoarding. There are boxes just everywhere with stuff for Elohim or whatever else is going on in this apartment. It's just everything is stacked up all over the place. Alice is clearly a hoarder. She complains that, Nyla, that Nyla has, where's my things? You moved my box. How can you find anything with boxes to the ceiling? But anyway, so Nyla she starts rubbing Alice's feet, and she's like, because Alice has been on her feet collecting, donations and passing out flyers and stuff. And Alice is like, oh, thank you so much. You are my angel. You're nothing like your sister. So here we already see what is happening. When you have these 2 daughters, 2 sisters, 2 of anything, anytime there are 3 people, you always going to have problems with 3 people trying to relate, because 3 people can't be a threesome like that. 2 people are always going to be closer than the 3, and it's always going to be
Ricky and Brenda. Doughboy, Ricky, Brenda.
Doughboy, Ricky, Brenda. Anytime you have that, so anytime you have it, but maybe in the same gender children, especially. Now, if you have a boy and a girl, it's a little bit different because of the genders. But when you have the same gender children, oh yeah, There will be comparisons. There will be favoritism. And the reality is sometimes the personality wise, you're just going to like one more than the other. So in Alice's case, she's like, oh, you are an angel. Your sister is basically a demon, and you're nothing like your sister. And then we already know you've been outside vomiting, baby sis. So we know you a little bit more like your sister than your mama thinks. So Alice gives Nyla $38, and she's like, that's all I was able to collect. And she's like, that's all? She's like, yes, Tangie wouldn't give me any money. So Nyla just graduated from high school, as we had talked about before. So then Alice and Nyla have this interesting exchange where Nyla is like, maybe you shouldn't have told Tangie that the money was for me. And she said, oh, I didn't tell her that, and then Alice tells Nyla, well, Tangie can't stand you. And I don't know, it's something about Whoopi Goldberg's ability to deliver a line that just makes it even more powerful. She's like, she can't stand you. The way she says it is just so cutting. And she's like, it's because you're so much better than she is. And like, she's saying stuff outright that's just crazy. So meanwhile, Tangie is this bartender, and so she's at the bar and she's flirting with some businessman, and she's like, well, I could show you around, I could show you a good time, another hookup, right? So she takes him home, and the guy tells her, oh, well, I'm just letting you know, full disclosure, I only got $80 on me, because he thinks she's a prostitute. And she's offended that he thinks she's a hooker, because she's not a hooker.
Bruh.
She just like to pick up men and run through them.
In 2026, it's embarrassing to not be the hooker, to not get paid for this.
I know. There would be no pride in 2026 for not giving it up. You must get paid for everything. And you know what? When you stop and you think about making exchanges, if you're a woman making exchanges with men solely based on what they can give you money. Oh, my time is money. Then really you are selling yourself, whether it's your company, you're selling yourself. So just call it what it is, but you never want to do that. You want to call it being a boss, then. But anyway, let me not get on that and be distracted. So and let me also say, a woman is in charge of whatever she wants to do. And if she want to charge for it, that's her business in my book. Okay. So the guy laughs at her and he's like, what do you mean? Of course, who would go picking men up for free like this, And so Tangie is like, well, you men with your double standards, because I like doing the do. That's why I would do it or whatever. You can do it, but a woman can't. So then we get to see how the rules are not the same for women.
Took them $80.
She didn't take it. So she basically, he's laughing at her and she's like, don't laugh at me. Don't laugh, and because she's not being taken seriously, and she starts melting down, and the man is like, you just crazy. And she throws this man out and she's yelling at him or whatever in the hallway. So just as the man is leaving, Nyla walks up to Tangie's door. So this is her little sister coming up to the door. And she's like, why won't you give mama the money and blah, blah, blah. And Tangie is like, look, I make sure there's groceries there. Mama's rent is paid and stuff, but I'm not giving her money because we can't give her money because she give all of her money to the code. We know this is how it would go, right? So then Nyla is like, well, look, I needed that money for a college application fee. So she explains how she has a scholarship for college and she needs $300.
Now, $300 application
fee. Back in 2010, I don't know about a college application fee being $300. Maybe it would be. But anyway, we kind of know that this probably ain't the truth. But Tangie insists that Nyla is lying. She's like, you a liar. She's like, you been effing, and she's saying that because she can see who she is. Nyla, you ain't fooling nobody with you trying to act however you act.
You showing up asking for $300. She know what's up.
And for whatever reason, why is $300? $300 been the magic number for that sort of thing, for what you might be trying to get handled for a long time. I don't know why it's been $300 since the 90s. Is it $300 anymore? Somebody in the comments tell me if you know what I'm talking about, then you know. With our deep dive on demand, we don't pick the film, you do, for just $75, and we'll take it from there. We'll do the deep analysis, and you'll receive on-screen executive producer credit and a shout out in the video. So get yours today through the link in the description. So she asks if Nyla is pregnant, and Nyla is like, no, I'm not pregnant. What are you talking about? And so Tangie revels in the fact that Nyla has ruined her life and that she possibly can't go to college. She's like, wait till mama find out that you ain't as sweet and angelic as she thinks. She's really reveling in this and whatever. So Tangie tells Nyla, she's like, I remember the first time I got pregnant and I was so scared, and then she's like, but I went to a back alley apartment number 331. And
Not
that
666?
nope. So I'm telling you, it might as well have been 666. And then she's like, but I didn't have no money for an application fee. But she was like, and then I wasn't pregnant anymore. So we just have to stop right here and talk about exactly what happened in this scene. So what's happening here is that she knows her sister is likely pregnant. She done directed her sister to where she can go get that taken care of, and she won't even need $300. She like, I didn't have the money. This is where you can go. Because come on now. She's like, it was apartment 331. You just go around behind this. She doesn't give her sister the money, but she tells her where to go for this back alley procedure. Okay, that's just wild. When you think about it, that's wild. But of course, Nyla catches the hint. And so in the meantime, Tangie goes to see Nyla's dance teacher, Yasmin, to see if Nyla is lying about the college application. And so, Yasmin is confused. She's like, well, there's college and everything, but then everything here is free. So no, she doesn't need this money. So when she finds that out, then Tangie starts snapping, I knew it, because Tangie is always just flying off the handle the entire movie, right? So meanwhile, Nyla done made her way to the back alley, and you just know it's going to be a mess. And guess who is playing the back alley lady? It is Macy Gray.
But she didn't just show up. Like, they made it like the worst environment you could ever go into. Somebody holding a dog, dogs barking, and it just looked like trash on your way up. A place you don't want to be going for a medical procedure.
Yeah, and everything there is just dirty and disgusting. The instruments are not clean.
Yep. Macy Gray is smoking
while she about to do this thing. It's just terrible. And then Macy Gray is talking to her. She know this girl is scared, but she's talking to her. And she's like, young girls go out in the world and they got to come see me. You know how Macy Gray talks with that raspy voice. Let me tell you, there are some characters that Macy Gray is just intended to play, and this was one of them. The other one is in Training Day, where she plays the character that gets her house raided, and she was pretty good in that too. Like, I don't know, I kind of like Macy Gray as an actress of these characters.
We wrote a song for Macy Gray, and Cherie is singing like Macy Gray. So Macy Gray, come on and get that song.
I know, right? So, but Nyla is scared, and imagine that though. Young girls do go out in the world and they have things happen, sometimes not even willingly, right? But then they all wind up needing to come see this lady because they don't even have the money to go to somebody, quote unquote, legit to get this taken care of. And in today's world, in 2026, you might live somewhere where you can't even do it legally, But anyway, so Nyla is scared, but she goes forward with it anyway. And this lady is rambling, and she seems, my note was like, she seems like she's under the influence or she's crazy or both. And she talks about, when I was in the world and then I went up the stairs and like it just was the most horrible experience you could ever imagine. It would be horrible no matter what. But
she could have had some good bedside manner.
Yes. And I just want to stop here because we talked about the movie House Party and how Play was trash for this scene, this thing that he did in the scene where basically he didn't really care what happened. He was like, if a woman gets knocked up, it's her problem and stuff like that. I'm going to link that video in the description because I feel like that was a really good conversation that y'all might want to chime in on. So next we see Alice rush into the hospital where Nyla is in there with the social worker after having been found passed out on the street. And so Alice is crying and she's like, oh, Lord, and the first thing she speaks of is sin. She's not like, baby, how you doing? How, you all right? No, it's just talking about the sinful situation. So she doesn't ask her anything about being okay. And then Nyla's in there crying. She's like, I'm sorry, mama. And then so each one of the characters in the film, they have these points where they begin to recite poetry And they're saying things that seem like in the moment they sort of don't make sense as far as regular dialogue, but it's this poetic dialogue that comes out, and each of the characters does it. And this is a point where Nyla does it in the film. And one of the things that she says in this poetry is like, I couldn't have her looking at me pregnant. I couldn't have my friends see me. So also part of the pressure of young girls and people in these situations isn't just the financial things. It's not just the things that would be destroyed as far as the dreams that they may have for their young lives at this point. It's also how other people would treat them if they are in the family way, you know? And then she talks about the procedure itself. She's like, you know, this hurts me, you know, and she even is very graphic about it, you know, talking about steel rods in her, etc. And this hurts me, but nobody came because nobody knows. And then she says the line, I was once pregnant and ashamed. And I just was like, this is so freaking sad. And it was happening in 2010. Now, For Color Girls is based on, you know, was written way back in the 70s. And so it's based on a choreo play, I think is how you would describe it. But at any rate, so these issues have existed for decades and dare I say centuries, for a long time, for women having to fight for the ability to just have control over their lives, let alone the perceptions about the decisions that women make in their lives.
So I think Roe v. Wade was 73, but I think the original might have been 72 as well. But I don't know what was in it. So
yeah. So, and then of course, you know, here we are in 2026 and it was overturned. So you can imagine how things have changed.
Oh, it was 75.
75. Okay.
Yeah.
So that play was, I think it was 74.
No, the play was 75.
75. Okay. So yeah, so like, ooh, you know, this is all right around the same time. So now we see Alice, she goes and she's banging on Tangie's door in the next scene we see with them. So Alice busts in there and she's like, you know, what did you do?
What did you do?
And she calls her the darkness and everything.
You are the darkness.
A whole man is laying up in the bed at Tangie's house and Alice throws him out.
Get out! What? Kill you! Get out!
Get out. You know, do you even know her names?
Out. Do you even know her name?
Because, you know, she running through men like there's always a man there and she kicks him out and whatever. And so she's like, how can you let all these men crawl up inside of you like this?
Letting all these men crawl up inside you like that.
So you coming in with all of your...
be crawling up inside?
I mean, because, you know, with your judgment, it's just crazy. And then we find out the root of much of the trauma, you know, and in the dialogue going on between them. We do have merch. This is one of my favorites, the Axiom Amnesia logo hoodie. I love it. And we have t-shirts and mugs and all sorts of other things. Go to axiom.app or the link in the description and you'll be able to see all of our merch and support the channel because we really need your support to continue doing this. And Alice is like, that lady could have killed her. And then we see Tangie say, she could have killed me.
She could have killed her.
She could have killed me.
Ooh, so now we're finding out what happened. I was with you, Alice says.
I was with you.
You think that made it okay? Yeah.
You made me go, Tangie said.
You made me go.
So basically what happened here is that Alice had forced Tangie to have a termination when she didn't want to.
I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there.
And Alice's point is that she went with Tangie when she had it done and she didn't leave her all alone like Tangie left her sister alone or basically sent her sister to this crazy lady, right? And Alice is mad because she blames Tangie for sending Nyla to this termination alone. And then she calls the termination lady an alcoholic demon.
She's an alcoholic demon.
So yeah, like the lady seemed like she was crazy, drunk, high, something. So, you know, that was spot on in there. And then they physically fight, you know. So now we're starting to get to the root of some of the problems between this mother and this daughter and problems that we know have happened to other people in real lifetimes, you know, where girls who find themselves in this condition are basically pushed to do this thing by their parents. In this case, it was Alice, right? After they physically fight, Alice is like, the pair of you, talking about both Tangie and Nyla, the pair of you could not have come from me.
The pair of you could not have come from me.
And then we get this explanation that the grandfather only left the money so that he could control Alice. That's what Alice believes.
He only left you that money so you could control me.
You know, and Alice confesses in this moment that her father used to put his hands up her dress.
He used to put his hands up my dress.
And told her that, you know, he was that she was the only one that he needed, blah, blah, blah.
Told me I was the only one he needed.
So now we get to see what was also happening with Alice through her childhood and even young adulthood, right? And she said he would tell me that I was ugly.
Told me I was ugly.
And I was just like, this is so crazy. It reminds me, of course,
so Color Purple.
Yeah, I was going to say, it reminds me of The Color Purple and, you know, what Celie went through. But this is so relatable to so many women, so many young women throughout the generations of, you know, the cycles of things that have happened to them that they have just been made to tamp down and swallow and deal with and supposed to go out in the world and act quote unquote normal after you've been through this type of trauma. But he would tell her that she was ugly, but yet at the same time, he was doing these things to her. But yet when she got to be 15, he gave her to a white man.
I was 15. He gave me to a white man.
Saying that he wanted beautiful grand girls.
He said he wanted beautiful grand girls.
And not like me.
Not like me.
So in other words, I'm ugly. You need to go and marry up with, not marry, excuse me. You need to go and have babies with this man. Did he sell her? You know, did he get money from this man to give his daughter to her? Like, that's not stated, but it just makes me wonder, was that part of the deal? You know, but the point being that you are ugly and beauty is whiteness, and therefore you need to get with a white man so that you can have beautiful grand girls for him. And why does he want he didn't want grandsons. He wanted grand girls, and you know why he wanted grand girls, because he was a self-hating, disgusting man who wanted to be able to have another generation to ruin. So this was just terrible, though, how he did her. Alice is saying that, you know, her father told her, don't sleep with the darkness.
He said, don't sleep with the darkness.
And then you, talking about Tangie, then you came after that.
And then you came.
And Tangie is like, stop lying.
Stop lying.
And Alice says, he touched you too.
He touched you.
Shut up!
I can tell.
He touched you too.
I can smell it on you. And the way she says it with disdain is just
I can tell. I can smell it on you.
crazy. So you don't know me, Tangie says.
You don't know me.
Oh, I do know you. I know you. That's what Alice continues. This is her mother saying, I know you.
I know you.
Of course she know you. You didn't. She's been through the same thing. So Tangie and Alice start to have this moment again, just like we saw earlier with Nyla, where they're speaking in poetry, actually sort of over each other, because they're each in their own world and thoughts about what's happening in this moment. And one of the things that Tangie says is, I want it to be a wound to every man arrogant enough to want me.
A wound to every man arrogant enough to want me.
And I thought that was one of the most powerful things that she said, you know, explaining her reasons for why she was wanting to pick up and have man after man after man after man. And, you know, why she was so cold to them. And it was like she wanted to hurt them, each of them who came through, you know, and she didn't care what their circumstance was. Many of them were married or whatever. You know, you come through, I'm going to, when you get up, get out.
But that's not how that works, though.
It's not, which is why she's in the condition she's in right now, you know?
I am the wrath of women.
We do have a mailing list, and this is so important for those of you who are missing your notifications on YouTube. If you go ahead to the link in the description, join the mailing list, you're going to get an email of all of our recent videos across all of our channels, so you'll never miss a video again. So basically, we come to understand that Alice's father had violated both Alice and her daughter Tangie. And this is just terrible. And so Alice is telling her during this conversation, I know you.
You don't know me.
And she's like, and of course she says it in just the most chilling way.
I know you.
She's like, I know you. You're the devil.
You're the devil.
And then, of course, Tangie just snaps and she's like, get out.
Get out!
You think you're so holy.
You think you're so holy?
You let him do that to me.
You let him do that to me.
And you're just like me. Tangie is screaming at Alice. And then she's like even beating her, hitting her and stuff as she's walking out slowly. Like she doesn't get out, like she doesn't fight her back. Alice just slowly walks out and is walking down the stairs as Tangie is snapping off, screaming in the hallway.
You're just like me.
And the nosy neighbor played by Phylicia Rashad, her name is Gilda. She comes out to see what the ruckus is in the hallway. And Tangie says, what are you looking at, you old B?
What the hell you looking at, you old bitch?
And then Phylicia Rashad's character, Gilda, says, nothing.
Nothing.
And, so much, she's like, I'm not looking at anything. Like, I'm not looking at anything and you're nothing. Like, it's so much that was put into that in that moment that communicated a thing. And she just was so mad in that moment. But I want to get back to Alice. Alice did have a whole lot of nerve to be acting holier than thou after she contributed to what happened to her daughter and thinking that she was better than her. Like Tangie said, you think you're so holy, but you let your father do this. So it's often the question asked, and we ask it actually with regard to the docuseries that was done on Natureboy. What happens when the person who is the victim is also complicit or becomes the perpetrator in some cases? How do you rightly divide that? Because they were hurt and they also hurt other people. And that's the character that we see Alice being in here. And also that's who Tangie is too, because Tangie hurt her sister. But that was a growth out of all of the dysfunction and the trauma that she had experienced herself. So then we see that Gilda lets herself into Tangie's apartment because after this exchange, Tangie has locked herself out. She got in such a frenzy. She locks herself out, and Gilda is like the manager of the apartment building. And so she has everybody's keys. And so she's got to get Gilda to let her back in. So Gilda lets her in. She slams the door. Gilda go get them keys and just busts into Tangie's apartment. Like unannounced, not caring. She just walks in and, tells her to sit down and shut up. And then Gilda just be letting herself into places because she did the same thing to Crystal in that video. We talked about Crystal. She comes in there and then that's where she wound up telling Crystal that she's got to take some accountability for what happened to her children getting tossed out that window. So Gilda tells Tangie that her and her mama make sense now because, see, she's been watching the mother come banging on the door and all of this. But now that she's overheard this conversation, she understands why there is such dysfunction. And she's like, you sleeping with all these men, acting like it's just sex. It ain't just sex. It all has a root and you got to find the root so that you can pluck it. And then, she gives her ice for her face because, she's been in there fighting her mama and stuff. And she just gives her care and tenderness, which is kind of interesting coming from somebody who is so hard on the outside and seems like the nosy neighbor. But she's at least a full generation older than her. And she's giving her the mothering that her mother is incapable of giving her in these moments. She also did the same thing for Crystal. And she tells Tangie, I used to be you. And so then we understand how a character like this can have empathy when you see yourself in another person. It becomes much easier to understand what they're going through, to relate to them, and to have some care and concern for them going up the mountain that you have somehow made it to the other side of, and you're on the other side of the tough times. So then Alice returns home where Nyla is there. Nyla apologizes again. Mama, I'm so sorry. And Alice tells her that what was growing inside you is a sin and it had to be destroyed. and go pray for forgiveness. And so is what she tells Nyla to do. So Nyla is praying and Alice is pouring this red oil all on her, head and stuff like this and acting like she's trying to exorcise a demon and stuff. And finally, Nyla has had enough. She's like hits at her and everything. And she runs out and leaves. So while Nyla is running down the street, she runs into the social worker because she runs over the blood of the 2 children who have been thrown out the window by their daddy. And their mother Crystal is trying to clean their blood up off of the sidewalk, and she's there with the social worker. And so then when they see her and the social worker recognizes Nyla, then they take her back to the apartment where Tangie is. And so they're waiting for Tangie. Tangie returns home, and Nyla confronts Tangie about sending her to that woman when she knew what would happen. But before that, Tangie always got a man with her. And the man sees Nyla and is like, who is that? And she's like, oh, that's my sister. The man is like, well, can we do a threesome? So then Tangie gets mad and then, kicks the guy out and stuff. So then when her and Nyla get to talking and trying to get on the same page, Tangie starts laughing at Nyla. Like, basically, when you got a mama like ours, you better learn to deal in comedy and you better learn to laugh at stuff because that's what it is. And so she starts laughing at Nyla's predicament and everything that happened to her. And Nyla's like, stop laughing at me, stop laughing, which is kind of a repetition of when that man was laughing at Tangie earlier. And so Nyla asked Tangie why she hates her so much. And then Tangie's like, I don't hate you. And then Tangie gives Nyla some advice. She's like, you can't love somebody, talking about their mother. You can't love somebody with that much hurt in them. And then Tangie says that she herself has lost touch with reality and she doesn't know what's wrong with her. She doesn't know why she did that to her. She explains that she survives on the intimacy that she has with these men. And it's all I've got, being alive and being a woman, which is such a sad state for her. But, and she says this line, being colored is a metaphysical dilemma I haven't even conquered yet. Like, she's just trying to deal with being a woman in the situation she's been with. But I can't even get to the part about being black. So then from the mouth of babes, as they say, we see Nyla say to Tangie, she's like, we're sisters, Tangie. And I think the least we can do is be there for each other. Like, sometimes it could be as simple as an olive branch being reached out. But I think it helped that Nyla understood, if not fully, where Tangie was coming from. She was willing to forgive Tangie for her inability to be there because there was so much of a dynamic that was going on, much of which had been created by the mother and the dysfunction that had been going on. So in the next scene, we see Tangie invite Crystal to the gathering at the community center in honor of Nyla going away to college. So some time has passed. So Nyla's going to be going away to college. Nyla has been living with her. Gilda tells Tangie, hey, I haven't seen any male visitors at your house lately. And then, Tangie got her butt on her back now because she's starting to win. She doesn't have to be sleeping with all of these men and stuff. So it's an acknowledgement of her changes, but each of them still maintain their attitudes toward each other, but they know that they kind of have a love and understanding. So Alice shows up at the party and asks for Nyla. So Nyla's mother tells her, Alice is like, I'm so proud of you. And then Alice looks around at the party and she's like, this is the devil's music. And, she refuses food and she's like, I have to go. So she leaves, but she made the effort. She came to the party to offer this olive branch to try to express her love for her favorite child. Okay. And then we see the women gather on the roof and then they are all talking about, coming together and being supportive as women and everything. And, of course, the movie ends at that point. So the story of these 3 women is Alice, has put the olive branch out to her daughter because you would have thought after the way that ended, Alice and them might not have talked anymore. It might have been a wrap. And then maybe the 2 sisters would have been close and that would have been it. But actually, there appeared to be hope for everybody. And then we saw Tangie stop sleeping with all these men and finding her true power in who she is herself and realizing that she's more than just a woman with what's between her legs and just living and existing. And then, of course, Nyla is going to live her dreams. She's still going to go to college and hopefully do well. And that's how the film ends. But we have like some serious issues to talk about. We do have the bedtime binge playlist. Go to the description. The link is there. And then you can put that on when you get ready to go to bed. And we update this list on a regular basis. And it'll be videos that you probably haven't seen from us across all of our channels. Let's first talk about the favored daughter. Like, when you have kids, even if you didn't have all this dysfunction going on, like the favorited child situation, even if you think that you're not showing that you have a favorite child, children feel it. They see it. They see the difference in treatment, even in the same home. And the reality is maybe that you can't treat everybody exactly the same because people have different needs and different levels of understanding. And, you know, they may not understand the logic, but so many times you just see outright, like the stuff that Alice was saying to Nyla about her sister was just crazy. Like, she hates you because you're so much better than her. Like, come on. Even if it was true, that's just a wild and inappropriate thing to say. Then we also have the kind of trope or the issue of the eldest daughter being left with all of the burdens because the grandfather, there was no insinuation that the grandfather did anything to Nyla. So Nyla was untouched. She was the angel. She was the one who wasn't sullied, but it wasn't, and I'm saying this all from Alice's perspective, because certainly it doesn't make you sullied if you have something happen to you. But, from Alice's perspective, you know, Nyla was her clean daughter. She was the angelic one. She, you know, not the one who had undergone the abuse that Tangie did. And part of why I think Alice didn't like her daughter Tangie was because she was like her and she hated herself to begin with, partially because of how her father had treated her. And the other part of that was because I think the things that you don't like in yourself, when you see them in other people, you're gonna kind of hate those things in them too, in spite of the fact that this was her own child. So yeah, so much going on there. What do you think about like the fall from grace for Nyla though? Because she was favored. She had everything in her favor except her mama was crazy and in a cult. That wasn't in her favor. But you know, she was getting the.
But I don't think she ever really was kind of on a pedestal. Maybe, right, if she knows that her mother has issues, right? So it's like it's nothing to be loved by a saint. What movie was that?
I don't remember, but I remember the line and us talking about it though.
Yeah. So with this, it's to be favored by somebody who is off the wall like this, and then who you have to navigate in life, and it's basically a terrible situation at home. And that was the movie South Central.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. There was a Fresh's sister talking about how, you know, the auntie, you know, wanted to come back and live, and she loves her and stuff like that. But yeah, so Nyla is over there in the home, and so what if she's the favorite amongst the two? She still don't treat you how you want to be treated because you probably don't even share the same ideals.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you hold her in esteem because you're trying to hold her to standards that she don't want to be held to as well.
What I think that Nyla also did experience, even if she in the moment didn't feel like she was being put on a pedestal, I think she had something quickly to compare it with when she fell from grace, so to speak.
I think a lot of people feel like that when they just mess up, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what happened. You know, she was having a good time talking to her friends about how she done this bad thing, basically, you know, like bad, right? This little bad thing, and then, you know,
the consequence is huge.
Exactly. And then you're trying to go to college, and then you get in deeper because you're trying to get rid of that. And yeah, it's just, it's kind of like a walk towards hell.
And what about like just the most simplest things? Like you don't have to be having this kind of level of trauma and craziness go on to just have been a disappointment. What is it like to endure disappointment of people who believed in you? Well, you know, I remember when I was at Tuskegee, there was a guy who had gotten drafted into the NFL, and he went away to camp or whatever, and he had had a party before he left. And it was this big party, and I happened to go to this party, and that's where I didn't even know the guy. And I was like, oh, okay, great. You know, go to this party. He goes off, and a friend of mine was close enough to him to have had, you know, conversations or whatever with him. And so I asked later, because it was after he went away, and this party might have been in the spring, and then like the next fall, I asked my friend, I was like, oh yeah, whatever happened to that guy? She said, oh yeah, well, he didn't get picked up, and I don't know that much about football. So basically he got drafted or whatever. He went away and he didn't perform as well. And so he didn't make the final cuts, if you will. Yeah. And so he was so embarrassed because he didn't make the final cuts, and everybody believed in him so much he did not come back to school.
Bro, let me tell you, I think it was like 5th grade, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
This girl, she peed on herself, and we didn't see her again.
Yeah.
Her parents took her out of the school and sent her to another school.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, and in the world we live in now, like your parents probably wouldn't, I don't know. But that was back then when you were in 5th grade. But I'm like, I felt, first of all, if I peed on myself at school, I'm still having to go back to school. That's the kind of parents I had. I had them kind of parents was like, well, you're just going to have to figure that out because you going back to school. Like the idea that you could get out of the social difficulties was just not a thing. Like you were going to have to figure it out. It was to the point that certainly by the time I was in 5th grade, I probably wouldn't have even told my parents that this had happened. I would have just been like, yeah, I'm going to have to figure out how to make it do what it do. Because that was just part of what it was like to grow up as a Gen Xer. You know, you had to figure it out and make it work out. And I think in a lot of ways, we're better for having to have dealt with our issues. But in some ways, maybe there were some things that we were dealing with that we shouldn't have had to deal with, you know. But that's just a person by person to person thing. But like these examples of like the disappointment. To see in your case, that was like social embarrassment with the girl peeing on herself. But like with this guy,
that's the same thing. You had the party and everything to send off. And
he couldn't come back. Social embarrassment.
Yeah.
But like, what about to his parents? Like, what was that like? Because he still had to interact with his parents and his people. And of course, I'm sure they loved him regardless, but they had big dreams. And I don't think that they were necessarily disappointed.
Right.
I mean, and I'm speculating completely, but I'm just thinking about just basic loving parents when you do your best and you just miss the mark. And the best is not good enough. Like, I think they still loved them, but I also think that it is a delicate line. Some people can be destroyed from their perception of the disappointment of the people that they care the most about. Right. And I think that was a danger of what could have happened to Nyla in this case, because she was, even though she had a hard home life because the mother was, you know, kooky, that was overcomeable. But the part where you now recognize what that other sister been dealing with, you know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of not being the favorited one. And yeah, I don't know, but I have like mixed feelings on this idea of favorited versus not favorited as a general way of operating in the world, not just with your parents, but like I think about, you know, how people get favor on the job, or people are favored because they're like other people, and you know what I mean? And so there are many reasons to be favored, but I've certainly experienced not being favored too. And I think that develops the soul and the character in a way that the favoritism doesn't. And having been favored in a lot of situations also, I feel like I can compare them both, right? And there's nothing like the reminder that favoritism is privilege. You know, it really is. And if you haven't experienced that, then you really don't know. You don't know what it's like if a person that's always been supportive suddenly is not supportive, or they look at you and they say, you know, I'm disappointed, if you're one of those people that's really sensitive to that. So that was something that really struck me about Nyla's situation. But so many things to unpack. Y'all go to the comments and tell us like what you think about this. And I'm not even getting on the whole thing about, you know, what the grandfather was doing, because we all understand and know what that is. And I don't know that and by the way, please, you know, watch your language in the comments, because it'll just get filtered out automatically, and then we won't ever see it. And sometimes there are so many comments, trying to sift through what can be put out there is practically impossible. So, but yeah, like there's that dynamic compounding everything. But the issues pointed out here are real issues. Even if you don't have that, there is so much to discuss between this threesome of 2 daughters and a mother going on. But I don't know. Do you think Alice still loved Tangie? Do you think she loved her at all? Or she only loved Nyla?
She just wanted to get money from her.
Yeah, I think she wouldn't have anything to do with her if Tangie didn't have control of the purse strings. Now, it's interesting. Do you think that that's really the reason the grandfather gave Tangie control of his money when he died?
No, it was probably for a legitimate reason. So just because the guy was doing that to her doesn't mean that he didn't love his daughter too. Right? We like to think that if somebody do something bad to us or do us wrong, then that means that, everybody always jump, oh, they don't love you, they don't care about you, they don't do all that, right? But he probably wanted to make sure that she didn't just give all the money away.
But what about the idea that Tangie, because I kind of feel like Alice didn't love Tangie at all.
Yeah,
I feel like she did not love her at all.
She thought she was evil.
Yeah.
But
what's weird is people be so quick to call other people evil, and you don't see how your evil deeds contributed to the outcome that you see there. And this is what I think. And I've thought this for a long time, and maybe I need to, I need some deliverance from it. But I feel like you can't have children and think that you have not contributed to who they became. If you look at them and you don't like what you see, you had a hand in that too. Now, the extent to which you had a hand in it, we can argue about, but there's no way that you didn't have a hand in it, even if you weren't around. That's still a hand in it. Your absence contributed to who they are. So that's how I feel. Y'all can argue with me in the comments nicely, please. But yeah, I don't know. So you think this is the worst story? Yeah or no?
Yeah, probably.
Of the ones we've covered so far. We've done these 3 plus Joe and Crystal.
We did have 2 kids die, so that might be worse.
I mean, it's definitely worse. This is like worse in a different kind of. I don't know. Like it's all just so bad, y'all. We have covered this movie, and then there's another movie called Lockdown that we covered on the other Axiom Amnesia channel, and this movie and Lockdown. The men were talking about Lockdown. Many of them were saying on that channel, I could only watch this movie one time. One time was enough. And that's the same thing that a lot of folks said about this movie over here. And I'm like, ooh.
That movie's nowhere close to what happened in this movie, though.
Well,
the men are just so sensitive and weak.
Yeah, because it had a scene where a man was violated and whatever.
Yeah, maybe a couple scenes, but
yeah.
They're just weak.
Well, so I thought that was interesting, but we can link that in the description. Yeah. So if you guys want to check that out.
Because the thing is, like with a lot of these movies that, that women are into, it's a lot of this stuff that happens. And just imagine if they were like, I don't watch these movies no more because this stuff happened in the movies. But for some reason, men just find it very acceptable to just be like, yeah, I can only watch this once.
Yeah.
And then talk about the emotions and sensitivity of a whole other gender. Wow.
I don't know. Every time I see stuff like this, we talked about how this relates to the Women of Brewster Place, or we'll remind you of that mini-series. Some of y'all went to the comments and said we should actually cover it. What we're going to do is put out a way that you all can help to crowdfund it so that we can make it work here on YouTube for the Women of Brewster Place. And there'll be a link in the description so that if you can help make that happen, that would be really nice, because we do need the support for the things that we're trying to cover, and our co-executive producers really help to make that happen. And as long as we're talking about them, I just want to go back and thank all of the co-executive producers who have helped to make this series on For Colored Girls happen. LaToya Chase, Makila H., Kimberly Bayetta Wetzel, and Regis Hale. We thank you so much. And it's not too late to get in to help on this film because we still have at least 2 more videos in this series. If you want to hop in and help, the link will be in the description for that. Also, really, anytime you want to support, it's axiom.app/support. You'll see all of the movies that we have upcoming and various prices. If you want to suggest your own movie, that's a little bit more expensive. But if you want to get in as a co-executive producer, we tried to make that available to where most people can get in and help to support the channels. So we appreciate that. I just want to say that up front.
If you made it this far, type "you're the devil" in the comments so we'll know you're one of the real ones who stick around to the end.
Be sure to check out one of the videos on the screen right now, and also be sure to visit axiom.app, where you'll find all of our recent videos in one place with links to them back on YouTube so that you can watch them here.